Well, hello everyone and welcome to this video. I'm the Flying Scotsman, and in this video I want to revive something that I used to do in the past, but I've not really done it so much recently. Because in the 2010s, I used to have a series of videos called Academic August, which obviously would take place in August. And, the inspiration for this obviously was LGR's Edutainment Month, which is held in April usually. But Academic August, a bit like Edutainment Month, would, see me taking a look at pieces of edutainment software. But also, Academic August would, I would also take a look at other pieces of software that may not come under the edutainment title, but certainly were things that I used in school. Now, unfortunately, I've not been able to do that for a few years, but this year I had a piece of software that, I've really quite fancied showing on the channel. So, let's get straight into it. Now, this piece of software that I would like to show you is a very, very early CD-ROM multimedia title. And before I go ahead and show you, I'd like to kind of put you in the picture a wee bit. Because at the turn of the 1990s, CD-ROM technology was becoming more available for the home computer. And that wasn't all. Previously, we'd started to see sound cards being made available for computers, as in boards that you would install in your computer that would mean that it could emit more than just your standard square wave PC speaker beep. While this was happening, the VGA adapters were becoming more and more advanced. We'd gone, in the space of basically a decade, from a computer that could only display 4 colours at a time in the lowest resolution graphical mode. Well, I mean, you could have a pseudo 16 colour 160, 120, but that was, I think, more kind of hackery within text mode. But we'd gone from being able to display only 4 colours in a 320 by 200 resolution, or 320 by 240, in the early 80s, to being able to display 256 and more color graphics at higher resolutions like 640 by 480, or even 800 by 600, or even 1024 by 768. So, with the rise of graphics adapters that can display multiple colors at high resolutions, sound cards that can actually output digital wave recordings as well as lovely MIDI recordings. That's basically, digital musical instrument sounds on a sound card that you could be programmed to play music. And with CD-ROM drives finally starting to come onto the market and actually starting to become more accessible to more users, suddenly the personal computer could be more than just a boring beige box in the study that you would go on to do spreadsheets and write letters. No. With all these emerging technologies coming together, and with software being written to take advantage of and to support these technologies, we could now start to access a plethora of so-called multimedia software titles. Now, these could be either games with full motion video, or they could be informational CD-ROMs, or they could be edutainment titles, stuff for the kids who, would appreciate, the software making noises, playing music, talking, even, playing simple animations or even full motion video. And this is where this piece of software comes in. Because the multimedia revolution didn't just stop at the personal computer, though. Oh no. Technology companies found that what they really wanted to do is to bring this new technology into the living room. So they started working on set-top boxes. So things like the Commodore CD-TV, later the Amiga 32. You had solutions from... you certainly had started to see CD-ROM-based game consoles as the 90s started to wear on. Things like the Philips CDI, which was kind of a game console come multimedia box. You had the Sega Mega CD add-on for the Mega Drive. You just basically dock it to a CD drive, and then you could play games on CD. You had the Atari Jaguar with its CD-ROM add-on, and you had the Panasonic 3DO later on as well. But the console that piqued my interest for this video was the video... I'm not sure what it's called. The Video Information System or the Video Interactive System. It was a joint project between Memorex and Tandy. Tandy, of course, being Radio Shack's own brand. And Tandy was... from where I'm sitting here, Tandy certainly seemed to be at the forefront of the multimedia revolution with their series of PC compatibles, because they started making available PCs that had CD-ROM drives and sound cards that utilized a special version of the then current Windows 3.0 called Windows 3.0 Multimedia Edition, which for the first time would bring sound card support to Windows 3.0, as well as support for things like joysticks and screensavers, and just kind of made it a bit more of a complete package than the standard Windows 3.0. However, the Tandy Memorex Video Interactive System, Video Information System, it had quite a few different pieces of software, including some games like the Lynx golf game, but it also had a lovely Koothy piece of software for the kids called Now and Then Our House. And basically what that was a piece of software you could go around and you'd basically go around a house and click on things and find out about them, but also find out how they work and what people used to do in the past before the emergence of, some of these things that we took for granted in the modern home the then modern home in the early 1990s. So today we're going to have a look at that. So you might be thinking, but Jay, you've just said that this game is available on this Tandy Video Information System. Why are we sat at a DOS prompt? Well, firstly, before I continue, I'd just like to say a wee bit about the Video Information System. It's quite interesting because it has a specialized 286 processor. It has some RAM, a megabyte, has some ROM, again a megabyte. It has a single-speed CD-ROM drive, and it has a sound card. And I guess if you literally just peel everything back, and the fact that it's sat under the TV rather than on your desk, you'll find that it is actually a PC, even down to it running Microsoft Windows. Well, I say that. It's running a specific version of Windows called Modular Windows, which I think is kind of a precursor to the modern Microsoft Windows for embedded devices that we see today. I mean, that would be a whole other video rabbit hole. But I guess that the fact that now and then our house is on this system, it will have actually made it easier to port to Windows on the PC, and this is a version we're going to be looking at today. So in order to do this, we have a 386 DX25, I think, loaded up with some RAM and a Trident video card. We also have a Creative Labs Sound Blaster 2.0, and onto which, with an uncharacteristically large hard disk for the time, an 86 box, 520 megabyte hard disk, onto which I've installed MS-DOS version 5 and the Creative Labs version of Microsoft Windows Multimedia Edition. Like I said, this is a version of Windows 3.0 that, it is for, designed for multimedia computers. So you have, So if you look in the accessories, you'll have certain things that can take advantage of that. So, for example, Chatterbox, that'll play WAV files. Jukebox, that'll play MIDI files. Music box, that'll play CDs. Oh dear, that must have been the driver. It's using a newer driver, so it probably overwrote it with blimmin' Windows 3.0. Windows 3.1 driver. Now, obviously, when Windows 3.1 came out, there wasn't actually a specific multimedia version of Windows 3.1. In fact, Windows 3.1 just supported multimedia out of the box. Windows 3.0, of course, also supports CD-ROM support out of the box. And yes, while you can install a CD-ROM drive and access it from within standard Windows 3.0, it will just look like a standard drive. There won't be a special icon for it in File Manager. Anyway, this is not a tour of Windows 3.0, but there were very few pieces of multimedia software made for Windows 3.0. Surprisingly enough, the Living Books games all work in Windows 3.0. Well, the original run anyway, so Arthur's Teacher Trouble, Just Grandma and Me, stuff like that. But what will work is this piece of software. So this is our house. So you start it up. So picture the scene. Okay, picture the scene. It's November, or it's a very cold Sunday night. You are sat by the fire. It's very cold outside. You've got to go to school, but you've got enough time to sit at the computer. So you start up this game because your parents want you to play something educational, and you get to hear this lovely theme tune. That is what this game kind of makes me think of. It's such a coothy game. And yes, I am actually talking over this because I don't know if this is copyrighted. Okay, enough of that. So, what is this software then? Well, like I said, you've got a cutaway diagram of your standard home. You know, basically, you're basically kind of like your standard picket fence house, as it may have been in the late 80s, early 90s. And you can click on any room, and then you can click on anything in that room. So why don't we go into the dining room? Be back in a flash, but first we have to move some bits.
This is the dining room.
As you can see, we've got multicolour graphics. This has been set to 256 colours, which the game needs. So, oh my goodness, it really doesn't look that great weather out there, does it? It's all grey. What on earth? Oh, honestly, I'd sooner be in that house than out there. Honestly, how coothy would that be? Imagine living in the mountains. you seen that actually? I've just realised what it kind of looks like. It looks like the houses in the Highlands or something. That's lovely and coothy, so it is. Anyway, so if so, let's imagine you've got your house sited, just outside of Fort William, and there you go. So, as you can see, as I'm mousing over things, a box is drawn pretty much around anything that you can click on. If a box isn't drawn around it, you can't click on it. So, let's click on something mundane. Cutlery. Because we've always had that, right?
We still call our knives, forks, and spoons silverware, but nobody really uses silver anymore. Mostly our cutlery is made from stainless steel, which means that even though it contains iron, it won't rust when it gets wet or be discolored from the food we eat. Stainless steel, by the way, was discovered completely by accident. A scientist testing different kinds of steel just happened to notice that one of the scraps that he discarded didn't rust when all the others had. Rather than ignoring his discovery, he went back and figured out what made the steel resist rusting.
That was smart.
Yep. He took advantage of an accident to bring the world a brand new product.
So, something I forgot to tell you, that some of the characters in this is actually based on the Family Circus series of comic strips that I do believe were in the newspapers and have basically entertained generations of Americans for years. And again, Family Circus, I think it's standard family. You've got, 2 adults, I think 3 children, young girl, young boy, baby boy, and I think a pet dog as well. I forget the kids' names. I think the girl's called Holly or Polly or something. I can't remember. And the mum's called Thelma. I can't remember what. I think one of the boys is called Charlie. But I like how they used this family to, basically be characters in this CD-ROM title. So, as you can see, we've got buttons around this screen. So we've got buttons that depict presidents and also people's parents, grandparents, and kids. So President Washington is you click on him and you'll see what people used in his times. Click on, I think that's President Lincoln, and we get to see what people used in, the 19th century. Then we've got grandparents and people of that age in the time that this was released would have been around in the early 20th century and would tell you about things as such. Parents might want to tell you about the 1950s and 60s, and the kids, well, they're probably elder millennial or very young Generation X at the time, and that's the default screen that we're on when we click on something. So we're on there at the moment. So it's kind of how things are happening in the 90s. And then these other buttons show you a bit about, I think, teach you more about what you're clicking on. So if we click on George Washington just now,
sometimes you just don't know what's good for you. Take me, for example. When I was a boy, we ate from pewter plates and drank out of pewter cups. Every meal, every day. Pewter is kind of a poor man's silver. It's got a dull metal gray color, but it shines up and will last just about forever. In fact, some of our family's pewter was made by an American hero, Paul Revere himself. Now, we knew that pewter was made with lead as one of its ingredients, but we sure didn't know that lead was so dangerous to human beings. It kind of makes me wonder what else we didn't know.
Oh my goodness. Kind of glad we were using stainless steel by the 90s. Oh me.
Knives and spoons have been around for a long, long time. For thousands of years, in fact. Knives, of course, are for cutting food. meat especially. And spoons are really just tiny cups with long handles for holding or stirring liquids. But forks are pretty new as far as cutlery goes. It wasn't until about 900 years ago that people in Europe began using forks to spear their food rather than just picking it up with their fingers. In fact, for a long time after that, those who used and could afford forks were thought to be snobs.
And there you have it. So let's go somewhere else in the house.
This is the dining room.
So I think you can go through doors to different oh no.
Closets are little closed rooms where we can store things away out of sight. But the word closet used to mean any kind of small, closed room, even where people slept, for example. Most early houses didn't have closets the way we think of them. Clothes and blankets and other things were stored in chests or wardrobes instead.
Of course, closet would be an archaic way of saying closed.
This is the dining room.
So I think if you want to go to a different room, you have to go back to the cutaway house view. So let's go to the living room instead, shall we? So where is that? Whoops. Okay, apparently the right mouse button works.
This is the living room. You might call it the family room or den.
So we get to learn about a lot of things. So we can learn about windows, and oh look, the weather's brightening up. Look at that, and we're starting to see like green, the colours of the trees and this blue sky. Excellent. I love it when weather is better. So let's learn, shall we, about the TV. Oh, I said TV, not the radio. Oh no.
Today's television gets its programs from all over the place. They come into our living rooms from over the airwaves, from cables underground, and from satellites orbiting in outer space. Our TVs can be as tiny as wristwatches, or fill an entire room with brilliant colors and stereo sound. And that's not all. The hearing impaired can read the words to their favorite shows, children can play their favorite video games, and we can see our favorite movies time and again.
So because the TV is a fairly new invention, we don't have anything from people who lived in George Washington's or President Lincoln's day, or even the early 20s, the early 20th century. But we do have...
I remember the real early days of television back in the mid-50s. All the shows were in black and white, and we only had 3 channels to pick from, and they only broadcast during certain daytime hours. And the station's equipment used to break a couple of times a week. Right in the middle of a show, your picture would go blank or the sound would go dead. And that would be that.
I'm glad that doesn't happen today. We'd miss our favorite shows.
It wasn't too bad. We half expected it. But the best part'd be when the actors made mistakes or forgot their lines. You see, most of the shows and commercials were done live, right in the studio. I remember watching a peanut butter commercial. The announcer was telling us how smoothly the peanut butter spread when he ripped the bread right in half. And he had to continue saying his lines. Another time, right at the end of a long, exciting mystery show, the detective was explaining how the murder was committed. And he forgot the name of the murderer. So he said, "You know, whatchamacallit did it." We never found out who the killer actually was, but we were laughing so hard that it didn't really matter.
Oh dear. I like this. We'll be right back.
This is the living room. You might call it...
So we can learn. So before we go, let's learn a bit about how the clock works. Because we have all the buttons.
Time passes by us very smoothly. 1 minute is no shorter or longer than the next. And that simple fact has caused no end of headaches for clockmakers for hundreds of years.
How come?
Because it's the job of the clockmaker to make a machine that works almost as smoothly as time itself. A machine that never changes speed from 1 minute to the next. They've built clocks powered by falling water and falling sand, and clocks that ticked off the hours using pendulums and weights and springs and even electricity. But none were as smooth as the passing minutes. But then, scientists discovered that the atoms which make up common quartz, like the sand at the beach, vibrate at a pace that simply never changes, minute to minute, month to month, year to year. A quartz clock. What a perfect way to measure time.
That's why they use quartz. So you can really learn things on here. It's not just history, but science as well.
Only families with money could afford clocks in my day.
In Washington
I
State. How are you
remember that
alive?
our minister had a beautiful clock which sat on the mantel above the fireplace in his common room. It was made of carven wood with a painted dial. But our family? We had a sundial which stood by the back door near the vegetable garden. As the sun moved across the sky, the shadow it cast fell across one of the numbers carved into the dial and told us the time of day.
And that's how people did it. What about in Lincoln's day?
The grandfather's clock standing in our hallway did more than count the hours for our family. It kept a watch on the night sky for us as well.
How did it do that?
You see, right above the face of the clock was a painted dial that moved pictures of the moon around from day to day. That way we knew when to expect a full moon, a new moon, or when it was in its first or last quarters. Now, knowing the phase of the moon may not seem that important, but for a farm family like ours, a full moon at planting or harvest meant that we could spend extra hours working in the fields, so it sure mattered to us.
And then in the 20s? Oh, well, I say the 20s.
We had an old 8-day wind-up hanging on the wall of our parlor when I was little. It was made from cherry wood, and it had a glass door with a pendulum inside that swung back and forth. On the quietest afternoons, especially in winter time when the windows were closed, I could hear its ticking even from the kitchen. But every 15 minutes when it chimed, you could hear it anywhere in the house. And every Sunday morning, like clockwork, my father would open the glass door and wind it up with a special key in 3 places. One for the time, one for the Westminster chimes, and one for the bells that tolled the hours.
The pendulum and wind-up clocks of the old days were pretty complicated pieces of machinery with lots of gears and other moving parts inside them. But the newer electric clocks that we had in the 50s only needed a simple motor, an electric current to keep time, so they got much lighter and smaller. And they also took on quite a number of different shapes. We had plastic clocks in the shape of houses and ships, and even one that looked like a cat whose tail swung back and forth like a pendulum.
And there you go. So now we'll find out how, got a nice wee animation as well.
The gears inside a mechanical clock are driven either by an unwinding spring or by a falling weight, which causes a toothed wheel called an escape wheel to rotate very precisely. As a matter of fact, the tick-tock you hear is actually the sound of the escape wheel escaping to turn one tooth at a time. As it rotates, the escape wheel causes a number of other gears to turn along with it, all at different speeds. It turns the minute hand directly, one complete rotation every hour, and the hour hand indirectly, reducing its speed to complete one rotation every 12 hours.
Oh, wow. So you had lovely little animations. I'm glad I did the clock, actually. So that kind of shows you that you've got animations. And then finally, I forget what this one does, the crystal ball, but finally we'll go and talk to the historian.
Today, you and I are used to measuring time down to the minute. We know exactly when school starts in the morning and lets out in the afternoon, when we have to be home at night, and when our favorite TV shows come on. But it didn't used to be that way.
It didn't?
No. For hundreds of years, folks had no use for minutes, or even hours. In fact, the only clock in a village or town was likely to be found in the bell tower of the church. So time was something you heard rather than saw. The bells would chime the passing hours to remind the villagers of their morning, noon, and evening prayers. And they would toll the death of a neighbor, one bell for each year he lived. And they even sounded the alarm in case of fire or invasion.
So there we go. We've learned quite a lot already. And, you know, I've got to say that despite the fact that this is an early CD-ROM, and, you know, by modern standards it would be quite simple and quite primitive. I mean, for the most part, you're just clicking on things, hearing WAV files and seeing static pictures. There is a lot of content, I think, to get through on this CD-ROM. And certainly for a kid at the time, they probably would have had enough to keep them satisfied for a few sessions at the computer. And I definitely think it would have been worth picking up a copy. I think there's a lot to be learned, even, like I said, embarrassingly enough, even as an adult, with certain things that I just did not know about the historical, about the historical background of certain things that you would find in the home. And I honestly think that there should be a modern version of this. It would lend itself so well to something like a tablet. You know, if kids are on a tablet, they could be playing something educational like this, you know, and finding out about things in the home and what have you. Although, to be honest, I think you would have to have another square. Because I think we would be the adults now, and the kids would be Generation Alpha, and you know, and then you've got I think the baby boomers are there, and then you'd have to have someone for President Roosevelt's time or something, and yeah, so I think an entire generation has indeed passed since this CD-ROM was brand new. In fact, some might say two, but yeah, certainly 30 years has passed. Honestly, it's quite frightening, actually, looking at something about history that is itself a wee bit of a historical artifact. Anyway, I've rambled on long enough, so thank you for watching this video. Please do join me for my next one. Cheery bye. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button. You could also subscribe to the channel and hit the wee bell icon to be notified when I have published a new video. But until then, please feel free to check out some of my previous videos.